Authenticity matters, but calibration drives leadership. That's quite a statement to kick things off, isn't it? Our source material really throws that at us right away.
It really does, and it definitely makes you stop and think, especially given how much focus there's been on authenticity for, well, for years now.
Absolutely. You know, that whole push toward be authentic, bring your whole self to work, share your vulnerabilities.
Right, it was a big deal, and honestly, a needed one. Moving away from those old, sort of detached leadership styles.
Totally. It helped build trust, make workplaces feel more human. Acknowledging leaders aren't, emotionless robots.
Exactly. It was about psychological safety, deeper connections, a really important evolution in how we thought about leading people.
Yeah. And I'm sure many of you listening, you've probably tried hard to practice that, being authentic in your roles.
Yeah.
But maybe you've hit a point where being completely unfiltered felt awkward.
Or maybe not quite right for the situation.
Exactly. Like sharing every single raw feeling or doubt might actually complicate things, not help.
Well, that's precisely the tension our sources are getting into today. They're asking, in this world we're in now, super complex, information overload, everything under a microscope.
Where every little thing can get amplified.
Right. Is that kind of radical, unmoderated authenticity, is it still enough?
Or, like the source suggests, could it even backfire if you're not careful? If it's not managed somehow.
That's the core question. So for this deep dive, we're really going to unpack that. Look at why just being yourself might have limits now.
And then introduce this other idea from the source, calibrated leadership.
Yeah, we want to explore what that actually is. What does it look like? Is there a way to practice it?
So our mission today,
Yeah.
dig into these source ideas. Understand the potential pitfalls of raw authenticity. Get clear on calibrated leadership. Maybe even look at a framework for it and figure out why this feels so relevant right now.
Starting with that initial thought. Authenticity matters, sure, but calibration, that's what drives leadership. It's suggesting something. More is needed.
Okay, so if pure authenticity isn't the whole picture anymore, what are the specific problems the sources point out? Where are the cracks?
Well, one big thing is that be yourself kind of glosses over a tough question. What if yourself, in a really high-stakes moment, is feeling, scared, or totally overwhelmed, or even just really frustrated?
Right. Should a leader really broadcast all of that, like every flicker of fear during a major crisis?
Exactly. Or vent every single frustration they feel. Because while that might be authentic to their internal state, think about the ripple effect on the team.
Yeah, it could cause panic instead of building confidence. Totally destabilizing.
Precisely. The source argues authenticity gets risky when it's purely reactive, when it's just the leader's immediate feeling dictating what they say or do without thinking about the context or the impact.
Like maybe sharing vulnerability just to make yourself feel better, kind of offloading it onto the team.
Yeah, instead of using vulnerability intentionally to connect or help the team grow, or being transparent in a way that actually creates confusion because it lacks, the right framing.
Okay, so the issue isn't the feeling itself. It's the unmanaged expression of it. It's not about putting on an act.
No, not at all. It's about being more thoughtful, strategic even.
Strategic authenticity. Okay.
And that's exactly where this idea of calibrated leadership fits in. The sources define it as not suppressing who you are, what you feel, but actively tuning how you express it.
Tuning it, like adjusting a dial.
Kind of, yeah. Tuning it to fit the specific moment, the people you're with, and whatever the bigger goal or mission is.
That feels much more conscious.
Yeah.
More active than just letting things spill out.
It is. The core question, according to the source, becomes, what does this situation right now need from me as a leader, emotionally, energetically?
And ethically too, right?
Yes, absolutely. To best serve the team or the goal. It's about finding that sweet spot between truth and tact. Realizing your internal state doesn't always need a direct, unfiltered broadcast.
It's about stewarding your emotions, managing their impact rather than letting them manage you.
Stewarding your emotions. I like that. It's a great way to put it. It really captures the difference.
So how do the sources help us picture this? Is there a model or something?
Yes. They bring up this concept of a leadership calibration matrix. It's a helpful way to visualize the space where this kind of leadership operates. It usually maps things across 2 dimensions.
Okay, what are they?
So you've got the vertical axis, which is usually personal truth. That's basically your self-awareness, how aligned you are internally with your values, your feelings. It's the bedrock of authenticity, really.
Right, knowing yourself, being true to that. Got it.
And then the horizontal axis is emotional intelligence, your ability to, understand your own emotions, read them in others, and then adapt how you express yourself effectively in different situations.
Oh, okay. So calibrated leadership isn't just being high on personal truth like pure authenticity might be.
Exactly. It's living in that sweet spot where you have both high personal truth and high emotional intelligence.
The intersection.
Right. The Matrix suggests that if you're high on truth but low on emotional intelligence, that's where you get that potentially risky, unfiltered authenticity. Honest, maybe, but not always helpful or effective.
So the goal is that quadrant where you know yourself deeply and you have the skill to show up wisely. Still you, but skillful about the how.
Precisely. You're grounded in who you are, but you're adept at modulating how that comes across, depending on what's needed.
Okay, the matrix gives us the what and why, but how do we actually do it? How do we build that skill and practice?
Well, the sources offer a pretty practical framework for this. They call it the C.A.L.M framework. C.A.L.M.
C.A.L.M, that's Andy, especially when we're talking about managing emotions. So break it down for us. C.
C is for context sensitivity. This is all about getting really good at reading the situation, understanding the emotional temperature, what the people you're with actually need right then, the bigger picture,
Yeah.
before you react or speak.
So instead of what am I feeling, it's what does this moment need from me?
Exactly. Taking that environmental read first.
Okay, makes sense. What about A?
A stands for adaptive expression. So once you've got the context, this is about adjusting how you communicate your truth. Modulating your tone, thinking about the words you choose, managing the intensity.
To connect with them and serve the purpose.
Right. Not just to get something off your chest. It's expression aimed at resonating and achieving something constructive.
Expressing to resonate, not just to release. Yeah, I see that. That feels very different from just letting it rip. Okay, L.
L is for listening leadership. This one's huge. It emphasizes really, truly hearing and understanding where your team is emotionally, letting their feelings, their concerns, actually shape your response.
Leading with your ears first.
Yes, letting empathy guide how you show up, what you say, based on what you're hearing from them.
So you listen, understand their emotional state, and then apply the context sensitivity and adaptive expression. It builds.
Okay.
And M.
M is for measured vulnerability. Now, this isn't about not being vulnerable. It's about doing it with intention, carefully.
Timing matters.
Exactly. Sharing struggles or uncertainties not just because you feel them, but because doing so serves a purpose. Maybe it builds trust, creates connection, or offers a useful perspective for the team.
Oh, so it's using vulnerability strategically to build something positive for the group.
Right. Rather than, say, making the team feel like they suddenly need to manage your feelings or anxieties in that moment.
Yeah, drawing a line between sharing authentically and potentially burdening people. Okay, C.A.L.M context, adaptation, listening, measured vulnerability. That feels like a concrete way to practice that mix of truth and emotional intelligence from the matrix.
It provides some handles, definitely, and the sources give some good examples comparing how a purely authentic versus a calibrated leader might handle things.
Oh yeah, like what? Let's hear one.
Okay, think about crisis response. An unmoderated, authentic leader feeling panicked might blurt out, honestly, I'm terrified right now. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Which is true to how they feel, but
Yeah.
yikes. That could really ramp up fear in the team.
Right. Whereas a calibrated leader, the source suggests, might acknowledge the reality, look, this is tough, I know we're all feeling the pressure, but then pivot quickly to reassurance and action.
Like, I'm committed to getting us through this, and here's our first step.
Exactly. They acknowledge the feeling in the room without letting their own fear take over the narrative. They provide stability.
That makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay, what about something like giving difficult feedback?
Yeah. Good one. The purely feeling-driven leader might just say, I'm really disappointed in this. True, maybe, but likely to make the other person defensive.
Shuts down the conversation.
Right. The calibrated leader, though, still addresses the issue, honestly. This didn't meet the standard, but frames it around the work itself and the solution. Let's look at points A and B specifically. What do you need to get this where it needs to be?
So still truthful about the gap,
Mm-hmm.
but the focus is constructive, on the work, on moving forward, not just on the leader's personal feeling of disappointment.
Precisely. Much more productive. And one more, public speaking.
Oh, always a fun one.
The purely authentic person might start with, wow, I'm super nervous speaking to you all. Relatable, maybe?
But it can also kind of undercut their authority right from the start.
Exactly. A calibrated leader might feel just as nervous internally, but they channel that energy differently, maybe into expressing the importance of the moment. It's a real privilege to share this with you today. This is something I'm passionate about.
So they're authentic to the energy of the situation, the significance, but express it in a way that builds connection and credibility, not diminishes it.
You got it. Those examples really highlight how calibration is about taking that internal truth and intentionally shaping its delivery for the best impact.
And the sources argue this isn't just a nice-to-have skill anymore. It's becoming essential now. Why is that?
Well, think about the context we're all working in. Burnout is high, people are emotionally stretched pretty thin.
Running on empty sometimes.
You're right. And at the same time, there's this constant information overload, intense scrutiny. Anything a leader says can be screenshotted, shared, debated instantly.
Plus, our teams are often really diverse, right? Different communication styles, different needs. A one-size-fits-all emotional approach probably won't land well with everyone.
Exactly. So in this environment, leaders need serious emotional agility. It's not enough just to be open. You have to be really aware of and skilled at managing the impact of your emotions and how you express them.
The source concludes pretty strongly on this, doesn't it? Saying leadership now is less about having the right answers.
And more about consistently striking the right emotional tone.
Striking the right emotional tone. Wow, that really reframes leadership, moving it from purely intellectual to deeply relational and contextual.
It's just a real evolution. Maybe the pendulum swung hard towards unfiltered authenticity, and now it's swinging towards something more nuanced, needing both truth and skill, wisdom and expression.
Okay, so let's recap our journey through the source material. We looked at how leadership thinking evolved, the limits of just raw authenticity.
And then we really dug into this concept of calibrated leadership.
And the key takeaway seems to be that calibrated leadership isn't about being fake or hiding your feelings.
Not at all. It's about being deeply intentional, about actively stewarding your emotions, considering their impact, and consciously tuning how you show up, your tone, your words, the intensity to fit the situation, the people, the goal, using tools perhaps like that C.A.L.M framework.
That intentionality, that tuning, that feels crucial. And like the source wraps up, maybe the big shift is leadership becoming less about knowing everything and more about mastering that emotional tone, having that agility.
Which brings us right back to that powerful closing line from the source, echoing our start. Calibrated leadership doesn't abandon authenticity, it elevates it.
It elevates it. Doesn't kill your true self, it just makes that self more effective, more impactful and responsible in a leadership role.
Yes, because it recognizes that leadership isn't just about who you are inside, it's fundamentally about how who you are shows up to others and the effect that has.
Which leaves us with a really provocative final thought, doesn't it? The source hints that maybe the most trusted leaders going forward won't be the ones who are the most transparent in that raw, unfiltered way.
But the ones who are the most tuned.
The most tuned. That's an interesting word. What does that spark for you listening right now as you think about your own leadership or just your interactions at work?
Yeah. What does it mean to practice emotional strategy? Not as some kind of manipulation, but with, as the source puts it, both truth and tact. Taking who you genuinely are and skillfully shaping how you deliver that to serve the people around you. Something to think about.